So why don't you like to mix your modules in the same...
I like the liberty and the freedom that the modular environment gives you, but I like, and I think I got this from the booklet thing, I think there's a certain mentality behind the designer, and I like to limit myself that I don't like too many options, even though it might sound, pretentious when you see two modulars in a room. But I like the fact that you can limit yourself to a certain environment, and that's why I like to put all Harvestmen in one small case. Because I want to see what I can come up with just with those, as opposed to, first of all, it won't be an oscillator, so I'll probably have to use the Polyvox filter as a sound generator, or use the Zoral and Canon, or whatever it's going to be. And I think that limitation is what makes me more creative, even though, again, it can sound a little, hypocritical when you see the equipment. I mean, if you see it and you actually analyze it, it's not that much. I have one polyphonic analog synthesizer, which I love, two monophonic, one is the Macbeth, and the other one is the Korg MS-20, and that's about it, man. Two modulars, and that's it. I use Core a lot, the Native Instruments, but that's a total different thing. One of my favorite synths ever is the Joe Mox Sun Synth. It's just awesome sounding. It's I think it's one of the few. When it came time to buy a synthesizer, the only thing that I was using plugins for was polyphonic pads. I was still using plugins, so I needed to buy a polyphonic. I wanted to buy a polyphonic analog one, so I went to Analog Haven, which is the place to go. And they had this at Analog Haven. It was there in a corner, and I plugged it in, and it just sounded freaking awesome. And I brought it home, and I kept in touch with Jürgen at Joe Mox, who helped me tuning it and all that, and it's been on ever since. I've used it on everything I've recorded. It's just amazing for pads. It's really personal. It's one of the few instruments I think that are not just reissues of old ones, but I think that it has its own personality, just like Oberheim does. Like you could, 10 years from now, people are gonna, or whatever, even now, because it doesn't make them anymore. How it is. As soon as people stop making stuff, they go crazy. Oh, where can I get it? And it's one of the few modern, old school instruments that has its own personality, as opposed to trying to recreate something that was done before. And the same thing applies to the N3X by Ken Macbeth, which is a much preferable mini-moog oriented or structured synthesizer, in my opinion. There's a lot more many more routing options, and it just sounds great, easy to come up with the sound that you want. Whatever you want to control via MIDI, you can if you want to. Even though I'm more like I do a couple of takes and just tweak knobs in a different way. I don't do a lot of MIDI automation. And then the Joe Mox drum machine, which is the fact that it has so many knobs, it makes it easy to come up with a sound I'm happy with right away, as opposed to, if I need something a little bit more research, usually I use Ultra Beat in Logic, because that one allows for a little bit more sound design and come up with weird stuff, since it's a little deeper, but obviously lacks the whole hands-on action that you can get from a machine like that.
What would you say is the percentage of soft instruments versus hardware in your band's music? Like when you're writing a song?
I think, the fact that I write, a lot of the ideas come from playing with hardware. I think it's mostly hardware, but I still use a lot of software. There are programs like Reactor from Native Instruments, Guitar Rig. I mean, even though I'm a guitar player and I know that a guitar amp sounds great, I've been using Guitar Rig for guitars forever, just because it's really easy to come up with the sound that fits well in a song, and to have enough variation for it to sound different depending on, the fact that Guitar Rig allows me to integrate elements that are more synthesizer world oriented, like sequencers and stuff like that, into my amp. So all of a sudden you have a 16-step sequencer sequencing the gain of an amplifier, or sequencing the position of the microphone. So all of a sudden it just goes from sounding like it's right in front of the speaker to the other end of the room in a song. So those things you couldn't do in the real world. And I think Native Instruments is one of the few companies that are doing something not to recreate old, like old mini-moog. I don't have anything against it, but I'm just saying that they're trying to do something new. And with Core, I think it's like the top of what that environment is, in the sense that they're putting everything together. The only problem that I have with it is that, as I said before, the more options I have, the more difficult it is for me to commit. So the idea is actually to use Core for my rig in the tour. So we're gonna try and see if I can switch everything over. We're gonna have an old rig where I have my old virus, my old Akai sampler, my old 01 V96 for volumes and effects, and my old guitar pod for that stuff. So that's always working. And then we're gonna Matt Mitchell, which is responsible for my rig, is gonna have a parallel rig where we're gonna recreate everything that we have there, all the samples and all the virus patches, into Core. The goal is to be able to have all my rig as a Core rig on a laptop or a Mac Pro, whichever is going to be. So I'll be able to integrate, especially nowadays when plugins and seen it as instruments. And one example is Echo Boy by Sound Toys, which is an awesome, probably the best delay that I've ever, hardware or software, that I've ever worked with. A lot of the plugins nowadays, including Reactor, Echo Boy, the first ones to come to my mind, are really creative. They're not just effects, so you end up creating music with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think of Core as a way to integrate those in a live environment without having to have a screen in front of me. That's the thing, that's the reason why I really like the Monom in the first place, is that you look at it, you load the patch, and then that becomes the instrument. You tend to forget that the computer itself is actually running it.